Now, Iran claims that a deal with Oman to reopen the Strait of Hormuz is on the verge of being finalised after both countries reportedly agreed coordinates to allow shipping routes through the critical waterway. The deal would mean all inbound ships on their way into the Persian Gulf would travel in a northern lane through Iranian waters, while outgoing traffic would stick to a southern lane through Omani waters towards the Arabian Sea, in coordination with Iran. No tolls or fees would be charged during this first 60-day agreement. At the same time, both parties would begin clearing naval mines from the center lane. Once it's safe for travel, it'll be open for both inbound and outbound traffic under a future permanent agreement. Darshana Soni is in Washington. Darshana, explain it all.
Well, if this deal is finalised, Matt, it'll give the biggest concession yet to Iran. You'll be aware that President Trump and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, have consistently said that Iran will never be allowed to control any part of the Strait of Hormuz. But this deal would give Iran some control over maritime traffic. Now, we haven't had a response from the White House or from Oman, but we have heard from Iran's foreign ministry. They have said that a deal is close to being finalised, but they have warned that it wouldn't guarantee security through the state because they claim that security is still being impacted by America's blockade of its ports. And that, of course, is something that still needs to be negotiated as part of a wider ceasefire agreement.
Indeed. And what is the latest on these ceasefire negotiations?
Well, on Sunday, President Trump claimed that he'd ordered the biggest attack on Iran since World War II, but then he pulled back again. And now he's saying that we're close to getting an announcement on a ceasefire agreement next Wednesday. Now, if these confusing and contradictory statements are giving you whiplash, could there be a very practical reason for this latest U-turn? Because there are media reports here that America is running low on missiles. Several outlets are reporting that the president's strategy on Iran is now being guided by its dwindling military supplies. Now, we spoke to one analyst who tracks munition stockpiles, and he told us that it could take 1 to 5 years to get back to pre-war levels, in particular long-range guided missiles and air defense interceptors. Now, we're told that this was raised at Camp David on Friday and that the president raged against his national security team, in particular Pete Hegseth.
What's the White House been saying about this?
Well, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has said this is fake news, and she has told reporters that any rift with Pete Hegseth is fake news, and she said the president loves the Secretary of State and thinks he's doing a tremendous job. And on those reports of military shortages, Donald Trump has furiously denied that there are any. He has said that the media is spreading treasonous statements. And the president has gone on to say that those responsible will be hunted down and long jail sentences will be sought against them.
Goodness. Darshana, thanks very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to Ali Vaez, the Deputy Program Director for the Middle East at International Crisis Group, who was involved in the negotiations that led to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. I began by asking him what he'd heard about those American munitions running out.
Well, we always knew that President Trump was concerned about 3 M's, the midterms, the markets, and the munitions. The midterms, I think he probably considers them a lost cause by this point, but he does still care about markets and munitions. And the fact that markets were reacting very negatively to increasing oil prices, I think played a big part in his calculations. Plus the fact that, according to open source reporting, now about 80% of U.S. interceptors have been depleted. That is the entire stockpile ever produced, not just the stockpile in the Middle East, which means that the U.S. now has not enough interceptors to protect Ukraine against Russian attacks or to protect Taiwan against the potential Chinese invasion.
Which is why they're hoarding them very jealously indeed. I mean, if you look at the broader picture, it looks as if the Iranians, despite the fact that they've been very heavily depleted in this war, are determining the timing and also the terms of how this conflict continues.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Matt. I think the Iranians have the upper hand. They are now getting in the current deal that is being negotiated exactly what they wanted, which is control over one of the most critical choke points in the world. That's not what a defeated country will obtain. That's what a winner in this conflict will gain.
So do you think they've won this war?
Well, in a way, it is a strategic defeat for the United States because not only the objectives that the U.S. had in mind, regime change or severe degradation of Iran's military capabilities, or closing off Iran's pathway to nuclear weapons, or destroying all of its regional partners and proxies, none of those objectives were achieved. And in addition to that, Iran has emerged with control over the Strait of Hormuz. And so that is certainly a defeat for the United States.
So let's say that what we have now becomes the new normal. They have some control over the Strait of Hormuz, whether they make lots of money out of it or not. The regime carries on, it rebuilds, it restocks to some extent. Do you think that the Israelis, the Americans of the future as well, and most importantly, perhaps the Gulf Arabs, will put up with that kind of Iran?
Well, the Gulf Arab states are now on board with this agreement, which would not have happened unless they and the Americans were on board. The alternative that the strait remains closed and they get basically caught in this cycle of violence between Iran and the United States with no predictability for their economies. It's just disastrous. For Israel, any kind of arrangement in which the Iranian regime can benefit, especially financially, is a non-starter. And Israel will try everything in its power to spoil this agreement.
6 months of war after the 28th of February, billions of dollars later, thousands of dead people, mostly on the Iranian side, and some dead Iranian ayatollahs, including the supreme leader, have left the world in a situation that was not quite as good as it was on the 27th of February. How bizarre.
That is the irony in this war, that now the main achievement diplomatically is to get us back to a situation that is even worse than February 27th, in which the only agreement reached is reopening the Strait of Hormuz, but based on the arrangements that would leave Iran in control of the waterway.
And the people of Iran, those that were promised regime change with America's help, those that wanted regime change on the streets, that died for it, what about them?
Well, they are left with a wounded and even more repressive Iranian regime and with the United States that clearly stabbed them in the back.
Ali Vaz, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.